Well, sometimes you get the bear and sometimes the bear gets you. But at any rate, you're listening to David's Pick. I can't even say my own name. David's Pick this morning. And we have a returning guest, so we'll get into that right after we have our moment of silence in memory of all of those that have served. And we've got the big weekend coming up that will be also in memory of all of those who have served and given the ultimate sacrifice. So we'll be back with our guest right after this. Amen. And so let's get on with our cadence call, and then we'll get into our show in just a moment.
Hey, I feel all right now. Hey, I feel all right now. Do you feel like I do right now? Do you feel like I do right now? Motivated, sky high, rock steady, oh yeah.
Hello, my name is Rick White, and I'm the director of the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. I want to encourage all Georgia veterans to consider being nominated to the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. And if you are a Georgia veteran, then the definition of a Georgia veteran is either you were born in the state of Georgia, or you've lived here 10 years, or you raised your right hand and joined the military in this state. You are considered a Georgia veteran. For further information, go to www.gmvhof.org, or you can contact me at 678-427-0915. We'd love to have your nomination for the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame.
And we want to promote that a little bit more, is that if you haven't been to it, you need to go to it. And it's right across the street from the Gold Dome, the capital of Georgia, in the Floyd building. And it makes a great grandparents, great parent day outing for the kids, and showing them the great folks that have been honored by the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame by being inducted, and they have their pictures up on the wall and their stories. So be sure and put that on your list. And now let's get to our guest for the day, Mr. Alex Wright. And Alex is on the line with him. Welcome back to America's Web Radio, Alex.
Thanks, David. Appreciate the opportunity to come back.
Well, you know, if once is good, twice must be better. So Alex, by the way, is a U.S. Navy veteran and also a Georgia Tech graduate, and is a Peachtree Corners City Councilman. And that's very important because of the monument that Peachtree Corners has that we're going to tell you about and invite you to. And special things are happening this weekend, and we look forward to that. And, you know, I'll just go ahead and announce it now, too. This is something totally different, but if you have a vintage military vehicle, we're going to be putting through our show called Classic Car Show. We're going to be putting together a tour, and we would invite you to let us know if you have a old Jeep, APC, or whatever you might have vehicle-wise. We're going to be putting together a very, very interesting tour, and would like to know about what you have in your garage, and we will let you know what we've got up our sleeves, and it's going to be fun, and we're looking at doing it possibly on Veterans Day. But anyway, with that being said, again, welcome to America's Web Radio, Alex. And we want to talk today, well, let's just go briefly over what you did in the Navy and the time period that you were in. And are you a native Atlantan?
Not a native Atlantan. I'm a native Georgian, but from a kind of a rural, little small town, maybe about an hour east of Atlanta.
Okay, and then went to Georgia Tech. And right out of Tech, did you go into the Navy?
So they have a Navy ROTC program there, and which interesting trivia for you. It's one of the 6 original Navy ROTC units in the country that was founded or started in 1926. After World War I, they decided they needed more capacity. The fleet had gotten real big during the war, and they decided we need a way to have a larger pipeline of officers as needed, and so they did 6 units across the country, and Georgia Tech was the only one in the South at the time. But so a little interesting factoid for you. But yeah, when I graduated from high school, there'd been a movie that had come out right before I graduated from high school called Top Gun. You probably remember it.
Oh yeah, very much
Yeah.
so.
I went. This was before you could stream stuff. If you want to see a movie, you had to go to the movie theater. And I went and saw that movie 4 times at the movie theater during that summer. I said, that is what I want to do. I want to be the the guy in the white uniform at the officers club. Just like a great teenager. That was very appealing. So when I went to Tech, they had like I said, a Navy ROTC unit. So I signed up. And so initially, when you sign up, you're not committed yet. They give you a couple of years before they kind of own you, I guess you could say. But signed up, did the 4 years there, and at the time, this was right when I got in, is right the Cold War had ended, and so all through the 4 years, they're shrinking the fleet. Well, the whole military has been shrunk, obviously, pretty dramatically. So the practical impact of that is it's much more competitive for because when you're getting ready to get out, they give you this piece of paper nicknamed the Dream Sheet, and you write down what you want to do. They've got all these things you fill out. I want to be an aviator or surface warfare or whatever. I want to be home ported in these places. And we would always joke that they would take that and then they would look at it and then they would crumple it up and throw it away, and then they'd tell you what you're actually going to do. But it didn't pan out for me to be an aviator, which in retrospect was probably a great thing for a variety of reasons. But after I graduated, my orders were to go to Newport, Rhode Island for, I don't know if they still have it, but at the time they had a surface warfare officer training school up there. And in Newport, used to be a large base as far as ships based there, but by the time I got up there, it really was just a huge training facility, a whole variety of schools like the Naval War Colleges up there. And so got shipped up there. I was there for 6 months in the first school, like I said, a surface warfare officer training school, which teaches you just basic, navigation, running a division.
Okay, let me interrupt you for 1 second. I know ROTC from an Army standpoint. You come out, you're a second lieutenant.
Yep.
And same way with the Air Force. And the Navy ranking is a bit different. What do you come out after ROTC?
So you are an ensign. So an ensign is equivalent to a second lieutenant, and then
would that be an ensign JG or?
So Lieutenant JG.
Or Lieutenant
is
JG,
an
I'm
02,
sorry.
which is equivalent to first lieutenant, and then the 03 is lieutenant, which is the equivalent of captain in the other 3 services. So it's all, in the Navy, a captain, an 06 is the equivalent of a colonel. So all of it's totally different. For whatever reason, I'm sure it dates back to hundreds of years ago how they came up with that. Yeah, so I was commissioned as an ensign. It's interesting you mentioned the Air Force because we had a joint commissioning ceremony with the Army and the Air Force because they also had ROTC units there. And just to kind of give you a perspective of how much the military was shrinking at the time, I think there were 3 or 4 Air Force guys that were getting commissioned because they had Georgia Tech at the time was on a quarter system, so they had a commissioning every 3 months. And they didn't even have any. They had shrunk the Air Force so much they didn't even have any slots, like any jobs. And so they gave the Air Force guys an option. They said you can either just walk away, you don't owe any money, but just walk away and you're done, or you can basically kind of go on standby where you're not getting paid by us, and you can go do whatever you want to do, and then basically check back in a year or so, and we'll see if there's any slots that have opened up. Now, this was also during the midst of a recession, so it wasn't like an easy decision for people to say, well, I'm just going to walk away because there wasn't a lot of jobs either. So it had shrunk that quickly because of the Cold War ending. Anyway, and they shipped us up there to Rhode Island, and it's an interesting experience because you're suddenly with, I think my class was like 180 guys from all over the country. Every college that had a ROTC unit. And I think there was probably about 60 at the time. And to put that in comparison, the Army had probably, I want to say, around 300 ROTC units. So a lot more Army colleges, I guess you could say. But that was kind of the beginning of the experience of meeting people from all over the country with all kind of varied backgrounds, which, not that you didn't do that at Tech, but most of those people were from Georgia or nearby states. You're suddenly getting that. One of the things I think makes the military great is you're thrown together with all these different kind of people, but with this common goal. Anyway, up there at school, so for 15 weeks in this one particular course, which I was kind of surprised how difficult it was. I think they purposely try to stress you in these schools, and they had a thing where if you got below it's either an 80 or 90 on a test, they would put you on mandatory study hall, which meant you had to go back into the building that you spent all your time in already, and you'd be there for an additional 20 hours a week with someone like right on top of you while you were studying. So they'd have 3 or 4 of these tests a week. So it was actually more stressful than Georgia Tech. I find that hard to believe looking back, but it was a very stressful place. And then sent me on to an engineering school, a steam engineering school, which was up there also, because at the time the Navy still had steam. Some of their ships were still steam powered, and they had a huge plant, like a mock-up of an engineering space, where you would learn all about tracing systems. That's the way they would teach you things. Is okay, we're going to learn about the evaporator and all the different pipes that flow into it, and you would have to basically memorize this entire plant. Because when you're on a ship, if you're standing watch as the engineering officer, and there's some type of, when I say casualty, not like someone got hurt, but some piece of equipment goes down, you've got to know where everything is and how it all interconnects to be able to figure out what happened and then fix it. So that was also a pretty stressful school. So anyway, they're about 6 months, and then you graduate, and depending on what ship you're going to, normally they would give you some time. You could take, a lot of people would take 30 days leave before they'd report to their ship. So I graduated in like December, and so I just took 30 days off because the ship I was going to was based out of Norfolk, Virginia, and I was supposed to report like early January. So found a place to live down there with some guys, and went home for Christmas. And then I can still vividly remember January 6th, 1993, walking down the pier in Norfolk, Virginia. It was like 7 a.m. in the morning, cold, dark. And I don't know if you've ever been to Norfolk, but it's the largest naval base in the world. And at the time, I think there was probably well over 100 ships home ported there. So these huge piers where they could get 4, 6, 8 ships on them.
Wow.
At the time, I think about 6 aircraft carriers were based out of there.
Alex,
Maybe even
I
more.
need to stop you there and take our first break, if you don't mind, and we'll come back to the number of carriers and what was going on right after this.
Hi, this is Rocky Blair, former 4-time Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Vietnam veteran. As a board member, I'd like to talk to you about Warriors to Citizen, a nonprofit organization that helps American heroes, soldiers, police, fire, EMT, and their families recover from the psychological harm caused by career-induced stress. Over the last 20 years, broken relationships have been a major causal factor for the highest documented divorce rate and resulting suicides in this population. This program, From Warriors to Citizen, is delivered free to families by professionals, all whom served in uniform and understand the needs to be addressed. I ask for your support, so please go to our website, warriorstocitizen.org, and find out how you can help, either by making a donation or sharing this information with an American hero that you may know. And thank you.
Hello, my name is Rick White, and I'm the director of the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. I want to encourage all Georgia veterans to consider being nominated to the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. And if you are a Georgia veteran, then the definition of a Georgia veteran is either you were born in the state of Georgia, or you've lived here 10 years, or you were raised to Wright and joined the military in this state. You are considered a Georgia veteran. For further information, go to www.gmbhof.org, or you can contact me at 678-427-0915. We'd love to have your nomination for the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. Thank you so much.
If you live to serve and want to make an even bigger difference, consider joining the U.S. Army. With training in fields like medical care, linguistics, and engineering, an Army career can amplify your efforts with humanitarian opportunities all over the world. Plus, you'll receive competitive pay and incredible benefits, so you'll be taken care of, too. Learn more at GoArmy.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And we always appreciate you listening to America's Web Radio and our veteran shows that we do. A veteran story yesterday. Today it's David's pick, and we have a veteran, Mr. Alex Wright, was in the Navy and was telling us his story about being in the Navy and how he got from Georgia Tech to a big ship.
All right, so like I was talking about being moved to Norfolk, Virginia, ported aboard the USS El Paso, which was a amphibious, I think they actually called it an amphibious cargo ship. So not that, I was talking about wanting to be a pilot. So that was really kind of a, look, at the time it seemed, wow, this is not what I had signed up for. It wasn't a very glamorous, when I got to the ship. And that ship at the time was slated to deploy to Indian Ocean. I can remember when I called the XO, all he said was, "We're going to be going somewhere hot and sandy." Other than that, I can't tell you anything. Maybe he didn't know from the Persian Gulf or Somalia, but we get on board. Within a week, we leave. We went down to a place off the coast of Puerto Rico called Vieques, which is a little island, and at the time they used it for shore bombardment practice, amphibious assault practice. So we were down there for probably a month practicing. It's almost like you'd see something from World War II, where they would have put all these boats in the water. They're circling. Mm-hmm. And then when the time, when they give the green light, everyone would head toward the beach. It literally was, it looked like that. And this ship was, it's not like the amphibs today where they got the well decks and they partially flood and the boats come out of the back. This thing had huge cranes, and it would, just like the World War II boats, they would pick they call them Mike boats. They'd pick them up, and then they'd drop them down in the water, and you'd have to go over the side on a Jacob's ladder, which is, like a big net, to get in the Mike boat. And these things are moving up and down in the water, again, just like you would see on these old movies. And you had to be pretty careful about it because, if you timed your jump wrong or, if you break a leg or get caught between the boat and the landing craft. So, anyway, after a month at Puerto Rico, we came back, we were supposed to be in port for about a month. But at the time, I don't know if you remember in Somalia in late 92, they were having this famine. These warlords had taken over the country, the government had broken down, and the United States, led an effort to intervene to break the famine. And our ship had been, the group we were going to be with, they had accelerated the deployment. They wanted to get some additional resources over there. So they moved up our deployment by a month. So we came back actually for 3 days. Basically, they said, get all your affairs in order. We're heading right back out. So then we deployed. It takes about a month to get there. I think 28 days steaming nonstop. You go through Strait of Gibraltar, Suez Canal. We're not stopping anywhere. And then we got off the coast of Somalia, dropped anchor. And at this point, the UN, the United States effort, they'd kind of taken over most of the major cities along the coast. So they had the situation under control at that time when we got there. And we're probably there about a couple months, just off the coast. We were with the WASP amphibious group. So it'd be like the WASP is almost looks like an aircraft carrier. It would carry AB-8 Harrier jets, a lot of helicopters, 4 ships, probably about 2,500 Marines. The Marines would be in what they called a MU, Marine Expeditionary Unit. They had their own air assets, had some tanks, whatnot. So we were there for a few months, and we actually we went ashore at Mogadishu, which was a very interesting experience because you could see at one point that it had really been a nice place. I think at one point the Italians had it as a colony, and you could see all the really nice architecture of the city, but it's since long just fallen into disrepair. Mm-hmm. And they sent us south to another place called Kismayu, which is right north of the Kenyan border. And we were down there with a group of Belgians who were part of the UN effort. And we were there for so long, what they started to do is they would rotate the naval officers ashore for a few weeks at a time to spend time with the Marines, really just to, I don't know about break the monotony, but just get to see what they were doing and be embedded with them. And that was a very interesting experience because on our trip over, we were just like a big taxi for them. And
Alex, let me ask you something. How long did it take you initially to get your sea legs? And then once you have them, can you take off for 30 days or 90 days and still be in good shape when you come back?
So to answer the first question, usually within like a day or two, you've adjusted. It doesn't take too long. Some people will take, I can't remember the medicine you could take, to help you with that, but most people wouldn't because it would be, guys would make fun of you or whatever they have to. I'm not going to say what they repeat the terms, but there's some derogatory words they use to describe the medicine or the people who took it. But usually within a day or two, you just got used to the rocking. And this ship, it wasn't small, but it was probably about 20,000 tons. And to put that in comparison, like an aircraft carrier is about 100,000 tons, or like a destroyer might be 8. So it rode a little bit better than a small boy, but it's still, it could get, we didn't need any storms on the way over, but still, when you get out in the Atlantic, you're just constantly up and down, or sideways. And it almost becomes, normal, if you will, because when you actually get off after, being at sea for quite a while, you still have that sensation for a day or two. I can remember almost falling down in the shower one time because you were so used to moving around, that swaying. So yeah, I guess going both ways, it's like a day or two adjustment. Anyway, so we were in Somalia, just Kismayu, spent time ashore with the Marines, and then they sent us up, had the whole thing under control. So they sent us up to the Persian Gulf to be part of an operation, I think some joint exercise with one of the navies up there. And we actually went into Kuwait. And at the time, they still had mines in the water. They had one channel. They had, this is a residual of the Gulf War. they had one channel that you could go into the Kuwait City from that they had cleared. So that was a little nerve-wracking. So we got to Kuwait, and we were there just a few days. We had offloaded all of our equipment for this joint exercise. And not too long after we got there, there was an incident down in Somalia where a group of, I want to say Pakistanis, had been ambushed by the Somalis and been massacred. And so they said, okay, you got to go back down there, and things are starting to heat up. So we loaded all the stuff back on the ship. And one of the interesting stories to me that happened while we were briefly in Kuwait is I was ashore with helping get some supplies, and this guy that we were coordinating with, the Kuwaiti, he was actually a member of their media. It was kind of, I'm not sure how he was involved, but he had been part of the Kuwaiti resistance during the Iraqi occupation. And he drove us around and, was showing us all the sights, if you will, of, what the Iraqis had done while they were there. Because you really don't hear too much about what happened to the Kuwaitis during the occupation. You just, we only know about successful ejection of the Iraqis. But anyway, we get back to their kind of media headquarters, if you will, and he had these posters that he wanted us to take back to the ship. He was very insistent about it. So he unrolls one of them, and it's got 16 pictures of torture victims of Kuwaitis who'd been tortured by the Iraqis. Some of it's quite graphic. And he was saying, people don't know about this, that what was done to us, and he was, he wanted that message to get out, if you will. They had a lot of anger, of course, about what had happened to them. So that was had a big impact on me, because we got back home, later on, people were talking about Saddam Hussein, or just as like kind of background noise to a lot of people. But when you have an opportunity to have met people or see these pictures, it's like, wow, that guy really was a monster. The stuff he did to these Kuwaitis just in the 6 months, it was horrific. Anyway, went back to Somalia. We were there probably another month, and then we left, came home. We actually got to stop a few fun places on the way home. That was a nice break, because at one point we had spent 69 days at sea. And one thing, this is a little interesting factoid as well, you probably didn't know. So in the United States Navy, they don't allow alcohol. I think we're one of the few navies in the world that does not allow drinking on the ship. However, there's two exceptions to that rule. One is if a foreign navy throws an event, and this would normally be the officers, like one wardroom throws a party, like if the British threw an event for an American wardroom, you could reciprocate. The only other exception to the no drinking rule on a ship was if you've been at sea for at least 45 straight days, you got 2 beers. And that was a big deal, because I can vividly remember it where because they've got alcohol on the ship, you just can't drink it. They brought this beer out of the dark, deep recesses of the ship, and they had the whole ship's crew, not manifest, but the list of the crew members. And so when it was your turn, you were in this line. Officers and enlisted alike, this by alphabetical order. You'd go up, they'd hand you your 2 beers, but you had to open the beer in front of them, in front of the people that were running it. And the reason for that was they didn't want a black market in beer to develop, because some people, maybe they don't drink, and they would sell it to somebody who did. And so you could imagine that could spin out of control. But I've still got pictures of, me and my beer. I think it was like Budweiser, some kind of.
Was it really beer or near beer?
No, it was real beer. I vividly remember it like it was yesterday. So had that. That was an interesting event. It was kind of fun, if you will. And then the other interesting event that happened was we did what's called a crossing the line ceremony, which goes back hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And crossing the line means you go over the equator. And on the East Coast, not many ships at the time had been over the equator, because normally our operations would have been limited to the Mediterranean. And the West Coast guys were handling the Persian Gulf. But this was an unusual circumstance. So we ended up getting to go south of the equator. So they've got this ceremony where the people who have already gone over the equator, they're known as shellbacks. And they're the ones who get to kind of run the initiation process. And if you've not been over the equator, you're known as a polywog. And they've got this elaborate ceremony where I'm probably not supposed to share any of the details, but let's just say that the day of the initiation, there's a lot of, I don't know what it's like now, but so let's just call it some physical abuse is a strong word, but they had a lot of fun at Polywog's expense, and this went on literally all day. And then after the ceremony, then you're a shellback, and it's a pretty big deal because they actually put it in your service record. Like there's this certificate because you can't participate in a future ceremony as a shellback unless you've got proof of it in your service record.
Wow.
And I mean, I've got my shellback certificate framed and in my office at work. And the only other things I got in my office at work on the wall are my 2 diplomas. So that's like, and my buddy who's the city manager here, Brian Johnson, he's got his framed in his office. So point being, it's actually a pretty big deal for the people that have survived it, I guess you could say. Anyway, come home.
Sort of like a fraternity initiation, huh?
It is. It's condensed, though, into basically 24 hours. And it's voluntary. You don't have to do it. But I think on our ship, there might have been 2 dudes who didn't do it. Almost everyone does it. It's been good fun. But, I mean, like I said, it's not easy. You get abused a little bit. And I would be interested to see what's become of it. I'm sure they still have it, but I suspect it's kind of watered
I tell you,
down
I need to stop you and take another break, and
all right.
We'll be back with Alex, and the second half we're going to start talking about Peachtree Corners, and we'll be back right after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, join me, Roger B., every Tuesday.
What's your mayor's first name? I know it's Mason is his last name.
Mike Mason.
Mike Mason. Okay, I should be able to remember that.
Gun accessories, prepping, and so much more. So be sure to join us every Tuesday at 1400 or 2 p.m. for Locked and Loaded on America's Web Radio.
Hello, my name is Rick White, and I'm the director of the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. I want to encourage all Georgia veterans to consider being nominated to the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. And if you are a Georgia veteran, and the definition of a Georgia veteran is either you were born in the state of Georgia, or you've lived here 10 years, or you were raised to right and joined the military in this state, you are considered a Georgia veteran. For further information, go to www.gmbhof.org, or you can contact me at 678-427-0915. We'd love to have your nomination for the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. Thank you so much.
This is America's Web Radio. Would you like to have a show, talk about your business, or express your opinion on America's Web Radio? Just email gm@americaswebradio.com and we'll get back to you. Thank you.
And we're back on David's Pick with our guest, Alex Wright, today. And before I go on, I want to remind everybody, always, whenever you're listening to America's Web Radio, have a pencil and paper handy or whatever you write with, a pen, whatever. But there's always information that it's just incredible. I seldom do a show that I don't write down some notes and have found out something that I didn't know. And there's a lot that I don't know, but it's always interesting. The shows bring about different points. And I want to remind everybody, too, you can catch our podcast on iTunes or on Facebook. And we prefer that you go to Facebook or iTunes or most any of them, with the exception of one. And quite frankly, we're living in a different country, different world today, and censorship is now more and more daily, and we want to avoid any of the high tech that is censoring any of our shows. We don't do or say anything that shouldn't be done or said, and we disagree highly with some of our big tech boys that think that they know more than not Georgia Tech or Texas Tech, but just high tech people that think they know more than our experts do. And I can assure you they've probably never been there or never done that. So just be careful of any of these organizations that think they know more than they really do. So back to our guest, and as we've gotten Alex's naval history presented to us, and now I want to talk more about what's coming up. And what's coming up is this coming Monday is Memorial Day, and many people get Memorial Day and Veterans Day and just mixed up and confused and not sure what it's all about. Well, it's about Memorial Day is about memorializing those that have raised their right hand, have kept our country free, and not for censorship, by the way, but have kept our country free and have given the ultimate. They signed the check that they would, if called upon, they would give their ultimate, and they've died on active duty, or they've died after coming back from active duty, and we like to memorialize them. And Veterans Day is exactly that. That's for the living. But Memorial Day is for those that have given the ultimate sacrifice. And if you have a friend or family member that has died from his or her service, and we don't ever want to leave out the wives, and it's whether they actually, or the women I should say, whether they actually served or if their husband served and they were deployed just as well as the husband was. Any spouse, while the other is deployed, is serving and taking care of the home, taking care of the family, and we always salute them. So, back to Alex, and Alex is not only a veteran, but he's also a city councilman in Peachtree Corners, Georgia, which is a city that's northeast of Atlanta. Beautiful city, beautiful foliage around the area, and they also have a monument to Vietnam veterans. Alex, you want to tell us a little bit about the history of what Peachtree City has done and what you all have planned for Monday?
No, absolutely. So yeah, we have a veterans monument on our town green that we actually just opened a couple of years ago. It's relatively new, beautiful facility. Have 6 statues to the 4 primary services, then the Coast Guard. Then we've also got one for reserves. It's got, I think I mentioned this when you had me on last time. One of the things that makes it unique is the people can buy a brick, with the name of a veteran on it, and we give each veteran an opportunity to have a video made either about themselves or about, if someone's passed away, you can make the video about the person. And the idea there is to keep the person alive in the sense of their story. It just doesn't become a name on a brick. People are like, oh, this doesn't mean anything to them. That video can bring them to life. And there's an interactive component at the monument where you can see these videos, or you can view them online from the comfort of your home as well. So anyway, this coming Monday, as you mentioned, is Memorial Day, and we have an event every Memorial Day, every Veterans Day, and we just recently started adding a 9/11 ceremony as well. But this Monday, so kind of the schedule of events, if you will, we have at the monument at sunrise, we have a group that goes out there to lower the flags at something, I think it's like 6:27 of a bugler there. So that event takes place. And then later in the day at 11:30, we have an event right there at the monument which is on the green. So chairs are set up on the green, and we'll have patriotic music, speaker, normally a couple of speakers. I think the mayor is giving some opening remarks, and then there's a gentleman, kind of was the life force of bringing the monument to life, is Bob Bala, retired colonel, lives here in the area. He's going to be the primary speaker, and his speech is actually, I was talking to him the other day, there was a lady who's a Gold Star mother, and he's going to be speaking about her and her son, who, I don't know all the details of his story, but I believe was killed in Iraq. I can't remember what year. So it's really, instead of her getting up and speaking, which would be incredibly difficult, he's going to be kind of speaking for her, if you will, about her son. So that's going to be the primary speaker for this event. And one other, this isn't directly related to the Veterans Monument, but it's kind of a side event, is also that morning, and this is happening all over the country. There's going to be an event called the Murph, which is, if you've ever seen the movie Lone Survivor, it was about a mission in Afghanistan in around 2005 that didn't work out, and the SEAL team, everyone on it was killed except this one guy, Marcus Luttrell, who survived. But one of the guys on the SEAL team was Lieutenant Michael Murphy, and this workout is something he used to do, I guess, when he was deployed. And so all across the country, this movement picked up where the morning of Memorial Day, people would get together across the country, and they would do the same workout that he did. And this is to honor not just him, but everyone that's, as you said, made the ultimate sacrifice. So I think that's kind of a neat thing. They're going to be having that at the town green right after the flag raising. Like I said, it happens all over the country. So I think that's neat, because a lot of people who come to these events don't know, that story or really much about Memorial Day. So it's really an educational opportunity, for folks who, myself, I know a little bit about Memorial Day and can share that. So that's an additional thing we'll have going on.
I can't help but think, and I've said this a number of times on various shows, but and you can certainly express yourself on this, Alex. All across the country, there will be color guards, and I still get chill bumps when I see a good color guard and working in sync, and whatever they happen, for whatever reason they're there, and I don't know, there's just something about a color guard that gets me. Would you?
Oh, I agree. I'm the same way with like when I play taps. Anytime I play that, it's like you can't help but get a little bit choked up. The imagery that that goes with it. There's an event at the National Mall, which I know is obviously not Peachtree Corners, but that I would encourage people to watch. That comes on PBS on Sunday night at, say, 8 o'clock. They do it every year, and the show really is a series of stories. They have famous actors that will kind of portray the people in the story, and a lot of times these people are actually still alive, but these incredible sacrifices that they've made, just really incredibly moving, and that actually was the impetus of why we wanted our monument to have that interactive story part. That was, when I saw that, we got to do something like that. So I would encourage people to watch that. It's really well done. Got great music, and like I said, the stories are. You can't help but start crying when you hear about what these people did for the country.
This is and we were talking about it earlier today, that there's no organization like the military, and it doesn't matter which branch. And we always encourage our graduating high school seniors or college graduates that haven't quite decided what they want to do with their lives, but they have an interest. It may be electronics, it may be, who knows what it happens to be. But I've made this statement many times. I guarantee that some branch of the military has exactly what you're looking for and will put a spot on your resume that nobody else can fill. It's the military is just, it's a great business, it's a great opportunity, it's a great teacher. There's just nothing bad about the military, and you will be joining the biggest organization in the world and the best. And I have a son that's a major in the Air Force that I'm so very proud of, and it's just something, and I get sick at the thought that only less than 1% of our country ever serves. That's just terrible. And the country has done so much for us. We owe it to our country to do something for our country, and for freedom is not free, and it takes a lot of folks to make sure we stay free. So I've been on my soapbox, Alex.
Right. No, I totally agree. That is, the stat you were just giving about the 1%. If you think about, I was reading something about members of Congress that have served in the military, and they were doing a compare and contrast with the prior generations. I mean, obviously, it's a wide age spectrum in Congress, but they were comparing it to, say, in the immediate aftermath of World War II or the decades after that. Such a high percentage of the population that served. And obviously, that was different circumstance, because we truly were in a huge war. But the people who volunteer, I think in a lot of cases it's just not on people's radar screen. To your point, they don't necessarily realize some of the benefits. And I mean, even at my age, I look back and think I'm more appreciative as I get older about having served. Right after I got out, I didn't really think too much about it, because you're trying to make your way through life. But as I've gotten older, I'm thinking, that wisdom or that knowledge, that came from that experience, in the military. Like, I'll give you one. This seems kind of benign, but it can manifest itself in a lot of ways. Where I was walking across the deck on the ship one day, and there was a piece of trash on the deck, and I didn't pick it up. I was in a hurry to go somewhere, didn't pick it up. Later that day, a captain called me aside, and I guess he was on the bridge and saw this happen. And he took me aside and said, you walked right past that piece of trash. Why didn't you pick it up? I didn't have a good answer. I was like, there's no excuse. And he pointed out that you're a leader on the ship. If you don't do that, if you don't show that attention to detail, how can you possibly lead people? That was almost 30 years ago, and I still vividly remember that. It really made an impression on me. You don't necessarily learn that just because it's in the military, but there were a lot of little things like that, like attention to detail that, the way that can manifest itself in so many other aspects of your life to help you be successful. So to this day now, when I'm walking around, I see a piece of trash, like, I instinctively pick it up, because at that time he, kind of called me out, like, hey, if you're not going to be the one, who is?
Mm-hmm.
So again, a simple story, but big impacts can impact your life.
Yeah, it's sort of like the verse in the Bible: "If not me, then who?" And
that's right.
It's I think, and I kick myself frequently that I didn't go to OCS, and I didn't stay in the military, and I wish they'd take me at my tender age now, but they just laugh. But
right.
it's I get, and the military is basically a young person's game. You can't. There are some things in the military you just can't do it at an old age. But by golly, I can still type if they needed me. But it's I respect the military more and more, almost daily, in that they've been working on perfection now for what, 240 years in our country, and they got it. There's a reason for almost everything in the military, and just like your captain said, if you don't pick up the trash, then who's going to do it? And you're expecting respect from your men, and that's how you gain it. And there's just so many lessons that the military will. It doesn't matter what branch it is. You learn these lessons anyway, and they've been practicing how to turn boys into men, and I guess girls into ladies or something. But it's there's something for everyone, and there's a reason for everything that they do, and they've been practicing it for years. And I bet it helps you day in and day out as a city councilman.
I would agree with that. It definitely gives you, as I've gotten older, it gives you perspective on what's important and what's not important, what's worthy of getting upset about, and what's not. Because if you've been in a situation, especially if you've ever been in kind of deployment in any of the services where a lot of things are kind of taken away from you, if you will, that you take for granted. Sleep, the opposite sex, alcohol, whatever, like these things you don't really even think about for a long period of time. And then, because that definitely helps me in life, where I'm like, what, this is, let's say you're in a stressful job, like your boss or whatever, you could just quit if you wanted to, right? You've got all this freedom that you don't even realize. I tell people who work for me that, like, hey, you get to go home tonight. You get to go home, see your spouse. You can grab a beer. You can go watch TV. All these little things that you just take for granted. So that really helps me not get. It takes a lot to get me upset. I'm pretty even keeled, and I think most of that is from that experience of just because you had to learn that mental discipline of, hey, you're on the ship. There's no escape. You just have to deal with it, to endure it. Give you a lot of mental endurance, a lot of mental discipline that I would have never gotten that if I just gone right out of school into, just a regular job. Like, because those jobs aren't really meant to, they're not there to do that. They're there to, make money, which is great. But, it does give you a skill set that it would be much more difficult to get somewhere else.
Well, as we mentioned many times, the HR person that's looking at your resume and sees that you're a veteran, they know immediately that you have skills that a lot of other folks don't have. One is leadership skills, one is endurance skills, and one is that you know how to take orders and fulfill your obligation. And that puts you a lot of steps ahead of the person that never served. No matter how good their grades were or anything else, there's still the Americanism, and the person that does serve and is willing, those HR people know what's in the oath that we all take, and you've signed the check to give your life for your country, and the HR people appreciate that, and you will too. So that's why we feel the way we feel about the military, and how people look at us and how people look at the military. And thank goodness that's changed, and we know that we have the best. And right this moment, if the best were called upon, they'll be the first ones there. And I talk about this too with the fact that we honor our first responders. Well, that's what the United States is. It's a first responder. We're the first any place when somebody calls or has a need. And whether it's covering a wreck or covering a war or Kuwait or whatever the situation is, the world knows that they can count on the United States. And I think that's a big responsibility.
Well, those are all great points. Absolutely.
Well, we love what you all are doing in Peachtree Corners, and tell us how to get there and the time of the ceremonies this coming weekend and Monday.
All right. If you're looking at a map of Atlanta, like as you pointed out, we're to the northeast, and there's a perimeter around Atlanta and interstate. So if you're coming from downtown, you would take 85 north till you got to the perimeter, get on the perimeter, and then you'd go the Georgia 141 north for about 7 or 8 miles until you got right into Peachtree Corners. And we just built this new bridge over 141, this kind of iconic looking arch bridge. It says Peachtree Corners on it. There's no doubt you'll know what you are when you see it. And the town center is right there to the right, and you go in there, you park. There's plenty of parking, and the green is kind of back off it's kind of in the middle of the town center, about a 2-acre green area. And once you get there, you can't miss where the monument is because there's 3 flags, and it's on the far side. You'd have to be blind to miss it. So it's right there. And like I was mentioning earlier, the ceremony's at 11:30. They're going to have music starting at 11:15. It probably last 45 minutes to an hour. There will be seating. I think they're going to have a couple hundred seats. And I think the weather's actually supposed to be pretty nice. This cool front's moving through, and I think it's supposed to be a high of like 75 maybe. So we're actually really nice weather because it probably wouldn't even be 75 at that point. So we get a little nice break from our normal hot, humid, late May weather. So if you got nothing going on, if you're in the area, I'd encourage you to come out. It's always very well done, and there'll be a color guard, music, there'll be a speech about a Gold Star mom and her son that's passed away. I'm actually very interested to hear the story because I just know a little bit about it, so it will be probably. Bob's a really good speaker, so I suspect it'll be a moving speech. And that's of course, we got the flag lowering in the morning, but I doubt anyone's going to come out for that. It's just a few minutes. But yeah, 11:30 to about 12:30.
Wow. And I would assume the music is all going to be patriotic.
Absolutely.
Good.
Normally we have a live band there, but I think this time because school's out, normally I have one of the local school bands come. But I think because the school literally just got out, I think yesterday, I think they're just going to have recorded music this time. They were going to probably have trouble assembling people who wanted to do that right after they got out of school. But yeah, it'll all be patriotic, absolutely.
That's super. And my best to your mayor, Mike Mason, and all of the city councilmen, and you all should be very proud of yourself. And I want to just mention, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Peachtree Corners, but there'll be a ceremony, I believe a ceremony in Johns Creek at the Wall That Heals, which is a replica of the Vietnam Veteran Wall in Washington, D.C. It's half-size that toured the country. And there's just all sorts of celebrations around the state, and we wish everybody a very safe weekend, a very safe Monday, a very thoughtful Monday. That's, if I could say anything that I would like to see out of this Memorial Day and all Memorial Days, but it's just thoughtfulness of the people. it's not just an opportunity to go to the beach or have a hot dog or cook out or what. It is, and it's good. But within that period of time, just take a little time to think about, it might be a friend, it might be a relative, or it doesn't matter whether you know anybody that's been in the service, but just take a few moments and just think about how great our country is and how great our military has always been. And in my opinion, and I really don't have room to speak, but in my opinion, those that have served on active duty and raised their hand, they're our heroes. And that can be said for first responders as well. They're our heroes. And, we had 2 young ladies that were police officers recently shot here in Atlanta, and we can't have that, folks. They are willing to give their lives for you, and you've got to be willing to support them. So, we've had another good moment, and we're going to have to put the plug in the jug, I'm afraid. Alex, I got to get out of here. I'll let time slip away from me. So, we'll talk to you real soon. Will you come back?
Absolutely. I always enjoy spending time with you.
Thank you, sir. We will talk to you later. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you live to serve and want to make an even bigger difference, consider joining the U.S. Army with training in fields like medical care, linguistics, and engineering.